Welcome to the Workbench and welcome to another episode of Wheels Wings TV. Today we have our finished pre-release example of Tamiya's new 1/48 scale F4B Phantom. Let's have a look. Tamiya provide plenty of options on how to display your finished kit, and the first decision to make is to have the refueling probe retracted, or, as we chose, extended. Be careful with the various small panel inserts. These fit very precisely, and if you leave a little too much sprue behind or take off a bit too much, you won't have a good fit. Next, we join the front and rear sections of the right fuselage half. This is a good indicator that Tamiya has other Phantom variants planned. We can now turn our attention to the cockpit. Make sure of the positive location of part Q4 because if installed too low, it will interfere with the fit of the cockpit tub. For ease of painting, we will leave the sidewalls of the rear cockpit separate, as well as the instrument panels and side consoles. The nose wheel bay is then assembled and the cockpit attached to the supporting structure. Rounding out the parts that need our immediate attention are the afterburner sections of the exhaust. The top and bottom halves are identical, however the attachment pins need to be removed from one of them. This is easily done with a razor saw. All these parts are now primed in black, before the cockpit tub and other panels are painted with dark dull gray. We can now spend time picking out various buttons and switches in various colors. At this time, you would apply the decals for the instrument panels as well. Final step is to apply some flat clear to the cockpit, and once dry, apply gloss varnish to simulate the glass on the instrument faces. The afterburner sections are painted with all-clad exhaust manifold, and once joined together, we can join the fuselage halves. Tamiya have very cleverly engineered all these pieces with very positive locating pins. With the fuselage together, we can attach the spine panel. This piece doesn't have the best alignment along the edges, so make sure to take your time while gluing. Now it's time to get your money's worth out of your pin vise, as there are many holes to open up in the lower wing. The wheelbays are built around a very robust molding, giving a lot of strength to the model, which is then installed into the lower wing. The upper wing halves are then joined to the lower wing, and then the entire assembly is mated to the fuselage. Next is the bottom section of the nose, and here's where you really need to pay attention to cleaning up sprue attachments, as any material left behind will result in a very poor fit. Tamiya have pulled out all the stops on close tolerances with this kit. Up next, we paint the intake trunking white and the turbine face in bright silver before installing the finished assemblies in the fuselage, being careful to get a good fit all around. The pivot point for the tail planes is assembled and temporarily glued into the rear fuselage so we can attach the tail planes at the end of the build. While we're at the back end, one of the most impressive parts of this kit is how Tamiya approach the exhaust nozzles. Each nozzle is made of the base ring and 6 feathers that look as good as any resin part. Careful cleanup is once again required, as the fit here is very precise. Being a carrier-based aircraft, another decision to make is whether to have the wings folded or extended. If you plan on going with the folded option, I would suggest attaching the outer wing to the hinge section and attach this at the end of the build to make painting and handling easier. According to the instructions and a little bit of research, Apparently you don't usually see Navy and Marine Phantoms with the outer wing drop tanks, at least when aboard an aircraft carrier. However, you should still have the pylons, so don't forget to put these together. Before assembling the vertical tail, a section needs to be removed from the front of the right half. This is best done, once again, with a razor saw. At this point in the instructions, you need to decide if you want the pilot and the radar intercept officer in the cockpit, because you cannot fit them in after this point without drastic lower extremity surgery. Before we install the windshield, we'll mask off the side windows so we can paint the middle with a thin coat of transparent blue-green to give the impression of thickness of the armored glass. A drop of Tamiya clear green and clear blue are mixed into clear gloss. I see this effect overdone quite a bit. You want to be closer to a classic glass Coke bottle color and not so much the visors worn by accountants and card sharks. Next, we come to the scariest part of any modern jet kit, getting rid of the mold seams along the top of the canopy. First, we gently scrape down the seam with a sharp blade, and once the bulk of the line is gone, we will work our way through 2400, 4000, 6000, and 8000 grit wet sanding cloths. Final step is to work through Tamiya coarse and fine polishing compound, either by hand or with a power tool, before finishing up with finished compound applied by hand with a soft cloth. Our clear parts are ready and can now be masked for painting. The missiles are a carryover from an earlier Tamiya kit and aren't as nice as the rest of the kit, but are adequate for the job and go together with little issue. Just make sure that all the fins are straight as you put them together. With all of our various bits assembled, we use the closed canopy as a sacrificial mask, tacking it in place. And now we're ready to get our airbrushes dirty. First up is some Tamiya LP Gloss Black on the exhaust nozzles, the heat shield, and the elevators in preparation for the metal finish. We start with True Color Light Pewter, followed by a mix of light pewter and tin for a lighter color, and finally a mix of light and dark pewter for the central panels on the elevators and for shading along various panels. Once this is dry and masked off, we can proceed with priming the rest of the model using some Vallejo Mecha Black Primer. I've become quite a fan of this stuff recently. Although not as immediately indestructible as Badger Stynylrez, it cleans up easier, gives a glossier finish, and when left alone overnight, holds up to scratches and masking tape just as good as Stynylrez. Although, unlike its competitor, it really does need to be thinned down for a smooth finish. I'm going to be following my usual black basing technique, so now with the primer dry, it's time to cramp the heck out of my wrist and start marbling in some white. I've settled on my own hybrid of traditional pre-shading and black basing. I follow the marbling technique of black basing, combined with highlighting certain panels with solid white, while at the same time avoiding panel lines for additional contrast. With that exercise in carpal tunnel done, we start blocking in our main colors, starting with white. These early Navy and Marine Corps Phantoms can be any color you want, as long as it's light gall gray on top and insignia white on the bottom. For white, I'm using a mix of True Color High Gloss Arctic and Alpine White. With the control surfaces and the radome masked off, we can paint the upper surfaces with AK Real Color Light Gall Gray. The tip of the tail and the inner surface of the speed brakes is painted with Vallejo Mecha Red. The anti-glare panel is painted black, and And finally, walkways on the upper fuselage are masked off and painted with real color dark gull gray. Now, what good is a fighter jet without missiles? First, we prime our missiles with light gray, then paint them with gloss white. Once the gloss white is dry, we can then mask them off for the various stripes and seeker heads. True Color's dark pewter is almost a perfect match for the metallic seeker heads on the sidewinders. As our kit is a pre-release example, we don't have the luxury of the kit decals, so we raided the stash and found an old microscale sheet for Marine Corps Phantoms. With all the decals beaten into submission with Walther's Solvaset and some Mr. Marksetter, it's time to wash all of the rivets and panel lines. We use Ammo Deep Gray panel liner on the upper surfaces, and a lightened mix of AK Neutral Gray on all the white areas. When sufficiently dry, the excess is scrubbed off with a dry paper towel and cotton swabs. This usually leaves some staining behind, which helps to add some extra grubbiness to the airframe. Now we can apply our final flat finish and remove the masking from the clear parts. The ejection seats are detail painted, and once dry, we apply some seat belts. Tamiya provides seat belts on the decal sheet, or you could go and get some aftermarket photo etch or fabric belts. We didn't have time for that, so we're going to simply use some washi tape. With all of our various sub-assemblies, stores, and weapons attached, the last thing to do is glue on the refueling probe, and our Phantom is finished. Now, I'm not a Phantom expert, so I cannot pass judgment on the authenticity of every panel and contour, but I feel confident saying this will be the best 1/48 scale Phantom kit. In the least, it will share first place with Zukimura because their cockpit detail is a little bit nicer than Tamiya, but with the overall fit and engineering of the Tamiya kit at a comparable price, I think that puts Tamiya in the top slot. It will be interesting to see how far Tamiya go with the different Phantom variants. I think we can be pretty confident we will see a C and a D variant for the Air Force at some point, possibly even a J or an S down the road. All depends. Tamiya is not the best known for fleshing out lots of variants, as fans of their F-16 will attest to. But based on what we have in front of us here, I think the best 1/48 scale F4B Phantom definitely goes to Tamiya. This kit was kindly provided by the good folks up at Borgfeld, Canada. Thank you very much. If you guys would like to see more content like this, hit that subscribe button, give us a like. Thank you very much, and we'll catch you next time.